is not necessarily an entity. It is a presence. And the presence is ignorance. To explain further, let's try this way. So an entity is, an entity can be anything. An entity could be something that is of itself existing individually on its own. In other words, an entity is something that exists. For instance, a corporation could be an entity. People can be an entity. A building can be an entity. A stop sign, cat, dog, anything that is living or it is alive can be an entity, or anything that may be seeming to be not alive can be an entity. So when we are talking about evil, or we're talking about ignorance, we're not talking about an entity, so to speak. We're talking about a presence. Now, the difference between a presence and an entity is that an entity is something that we can define as being something we can either see, touch, or comprehend as something that is tangible. When we talk about an entity, anything that we discuss when it comes to entity is usually something we can find tangible in some way, shape, or form. Whether it be physical, whether it be something literal, is some way, shape, or form we can find tangibility in it. That's an entity. So when you talk about a negative spirit, we're talking about something that is intangible. So we can't really say that it is an actual entity, so to speak, because it's not really it's not tangible. But what we can see is the manifestations of what we call a negative spirit. And the manifestations that we see are manifestations of ignorance. That ignorance that we see, quote unquote, manifested through a physical body or anything else is called a presence. You know how people say, oh, I feel the presence of evil. What they're talking about is a actual feeling or energy, or something that you can't hold with your bare hands, but it is ethereal and you can feel it. It is in the atmosphere, you see. So it is actually the presence. So when we talk about negative entities, negative energies, and things of that nature, what we're talking about is a presence. When you walk into a room, that room can be filled with complete darkness, and it could be so dark that you can feel it. In other words, when you walk into the room, you can feel that there is no presence of light in that room. There's only the presence of darkness, which can feel uncomfortable. So immediately we'll try to satiate that situation by supplying the presence of light by turning on a light switch. And that light switch will be, okay, there's a presence of light in the room, so now the darkness has disintegrated. So it is the same thing with the mind of a human being, or the body embodiment of the human soul. The human soul is a presence. And the human soul can be either a human soul or a presence of light, or it can be a presence of darkness. Now, if it is a presence of darkness, that means that its whole embodiment is completely ignorant. It has no light. It is a complete darkness of anything that is of knowledge, anything that's of logic and of sensible behavior. For instance, the universe, the earth, the sun, the moon, and stars. Define divinity of light, which is anything that is divinely ordered. You know, like this, the bird has wings because it is divine that it should fly. That is why a bird has wings. And you know, so these are the things that we're talking about when we talk about divine order, and we talk about the significance of a presence. So when we talk about ignorance, what we're dealing with is a presence. We're not talking about an actual entity. The soul is a presence, and that presence has life, and that life has an energy source, and that energy source can be a source or presence of ignorance, or it could be a presence of knowledge. And in either form that it's living in, It can either have light or it can have darkness. See, so when you're dealing with a person that is a dark consciousness, their consciousness is in that presence that is there is a presence of ignorance. And ignorance is indicative of evil, because if you are ignorant of something, then you may do things that are harmful that you may not necessarily do if you knew better. When you are ignorant, your ignorance may lead you to do evil deeds or evil things because you don't know. But when your mind and your consciousness is filled with light and knowledge, you're going to do good things. So this is what we are talking about. The presence of light, the presence of energy. What is negative? What is a negative spirit? What is a demon? What is a satanic? What is a devil? Devil comes from the word evil. Devil, evil. Devil is nothing but it's an idea. A satanic spirit is actually an idea. It's not really so much an entity. It's more so an idea. You know, we can say, okay, all of this, the presence of ignorance and void of light and knowledge makes one behave like this, and this. And because he's behaving like that, that makes him a spirit of evil, a spirit of negativity. But we can't see the spirit physically with our eyes, but we know that it exists because we see the manifestations of it. So what is it that we're actually dealing with? If there's a soul that lives within the confines of a physical body, that presence or that soul that lives within the physical body is either made up of light or is made up of extension darkness, which means it either knows or it doesn't know. And what it doesn't know is the esoteric knowledge of the universe and the earth that we abide in. It doesn't know itself. Therefore, it is prompt to do anything. It is prompt to then become an inventor of things, to take what is already perfect and right and create it to be something that it was never proposed or created to be. That's where homosexuality and things of that nature come into play. So this is what we're doing.